Welcome back, YouTube, to Icy Chap's Edge. I'm Icy Chap, here with another part to my series on rope and knots, and today I'm going to talk about loops. And other than hitches, loops are really the most important category of knots. They're extremely useful because they can be attached to basically any fixed or free object, and then removed from that object without untying the knot. And that's a quality that is really unique to loops. Not even hitches can do that. When you tie a hitch to a fixed object, you have to untie the hitch before you can remove your rope. But that's not the case with loops. There are basically 4 loops that I'm going to cover. Those are the bowline, the Spanish bowline, the figure-8 loop, and the noose. And I'll explain each of those in turn. So I've got a lot to cover. Let's get to it. The bowline knot is one of the most useful knots. In fact, sometimes it's even referred to as the king of knots. Basically, it forms a strong fixed loop which will never slip or change its shape, and you can tie it and untie it very easily. And because of that, it's a very versatile knot. You can attach that loop to fixed objects, pull the loop off the object, all without untying the knot. So you can use it again and again. I'll show you how to tie it. It's very easy. Make yourself a loop, create a nice big bite, which is actually going to form your loop after you tie the knot. Take your working end, pass it through your loop, behind the standing part, back through the loop, and then when you grab a hold of the bite and your working end, just pull the standing end to set the knot. And there you have the bowline knot. And as you can see, it's created this nice loop which is very strong, will not seize, very easy to untie, and I can use this loop for pretty much anything I need. The figure-8 loop is another very useful loop that's easy to tie. It also won't seize, and it provides me with 2 additional working ends, which might be just what I need for that situation. First, I have to find the 2 ends of my rope, and using my fist, pull the rope through until I find the center of the rope. Then decide how large I want my loop to be, and then just tie a figure-8 stopper knot. And there I have the figure-8 loop. As you can see, I now have 2 additional lines to work off of and a very secure loop. The Spanish bowline is a very important knot. The problem is it can be very difficult to tie. Usually videos that show you how to tie the Spanish bowline have the rope laying flat on a table, but in the woods we're probably not going to have access to that. Instead, what's much more likely is to have our rope hanging without access to either end. And that's really where the Spanish bowline shines, because it will create 2 free hanging loops in the middle of our line, which will allow us to hang gear. The other thing it's useful for is to make a harness. And that harness allows us to put our legs through the 2 loops, and we can use it to lower ourselves down to someone who's hurt themselves falling down an incline, or even to lower the rope down to them and help them climb back up. So here's how you tie it. And again, I'm going to do this not resting the rope on the table, but just hanging it loose. So first we go left over right to make a loop. Then I'm going to take the right line and pass it through that loop to create another loop. I'm then going to grab the top of the original loop and grab the bottom with my pinky. And that's what it should look like. Then I'm going to twist the 2 top loops in towards each other so it looks like that. And then the final step is to reach through these loops, grab the bottom loops that are being held by my pinkies, and pull them through those top loops. And that is what creates the Spanish bowline. And as you see, I have 2 very secure loops which can either hang so that I can attach gear, or I can use this as a harness if I made them bigger and fit my legs through. So there you have the Spanish bowline. The noose is actually a very useful wilderness knot. it basically creates a very strong and secure slip loop, and once that loop tightens, it does not loosen very easily. So that makes it a very effective snare. And it's not that complicated to tie, and I'll show you that right now. Basically what you want to do is you want to create 2 bites. So here I have a bite, and then I'll make a second bite. And that first bite is what's going to create the loop of my noose. So then what I do is I cross my working end over that first bite, and I begin to wrap coils around both of my bites, kind of like so. And then once I get almost to the end of my working end, I'm going to pass my working end through the loop that was formed by that second bite. I'm going to pinch it down so that it stays secure, and then with my other bite I'm basically going to pull on that until I tighten that loop down over my working end, and that is what makes the noose. I'll show you how it works very simply. You just pull on the standing end and the noose tightens up, and it's very, very secure. The noose will not come undone unless you actively loosen it. So there's the noose, a very effective snare knot, very effective slip loop. And like all slip loops, to undo them, all you have to do is pull the standing end right through the knot, and the knot basically just comes undone. So that's the noose. So remember that the usefulness of loops is really limited only by your imagination. Take for example this bowline. If I pass the standing end through the bowline, I right away have created a very simple slip knot or snare. And that's just one example of the many uses for the bowline. In fact, if you have a few bowlines tied in series on the same line, you can actually create a tackle system. A tackle system is just a fancy way of saying a series of pulleys which will allow you to lift very heavy objects with minimal force. So there you have it. That's my video on loops. Please check out the other videos in my series on rope and knots. Leave comments, subscribe, and have a good one.
Shake it!